Did Focal at no point during the development for this headphone get someone under 25 to try them? Really? The Focal Clear MG. This is a direct replacement for the old Focal Clear, and I did actually have those in for a little while. I've not got a full video coming just because they were actually sold before I could finish the review, unfortunately, but I will be talking a little bit about the MG versus the OG, and I also have a pair of Elects coming, which if you want to read the review of those, that will be going up on my website, GoldenSound.audio. So, the MG themselves then. I have very mixed thoughts about these. I think there's a couple things which these do really, really well, but the trade-offs compared to other Focal headphones, as well as just other headphones generally, I think make these not worth the money. So I'm going to talk about the build, I'm going to talk about the things which these do really well, and then I'm going to talk about the things which these don't do so well, including one problem, which if you're under 25 or so, might be a big one, and might write these headphones off entirely for you. So let's talk about the build. The build itself is fantastic. When you first unbox them, it's a lovely box. You get a balanced and an unbalanced cable and this lovely carrying case. Seriously, I really wish more headphones came with stuff like this. Absolutely fantastic for taking these to work and back, wherever you want to go. Cable. The cable is, it's okay. It uses a neutral connector, which is nice rather than something proprietary. And on this end, it is standard 3.5mm TS connections. Wide as well, which means that you can use any kind of custom cable you like. It'll fit in there with no problem. There are some headphones which, even if they use a standard connection, like the Diana V2, because that is so thin, there's only a handful of connectors that'll actually fit, and most custom cables might not. So thank you very much, Focal, for just using an easy-to-replace standard connector there. Makes getting a fancier, or replacement even, cable much, much easier. It's got quite a bit of shape memory. It's a bit stiff, a little bit microphonic. Not my favorite cable in the world. It's quite long as well, but it's certainly not bad. Unfortunately, not many headphones actually come with decent cables, even very expensive ones. The Susvara, I love the Susvara, but good God, the cable that comes with that is the worst of any headphone I've tried. So the headphones themselves, though, are really, really nice. They look and feel really, really premium. Everything from the choice of materials, this sort of faux leather stuff, this suede material. The pads are just the right amount of firm but plush. The text, the cutouts here are really, really sharp. Might set off your trypophobia if you have that, but I think these look absolutely stunning. These are really, really sharp, really, really sleek. And it's even just little things like most headphones, such as the Zeus, for example, the swivel is done here. Whereas on the Clear MG, it's done in the headband itself. You can actually see how that mechanism works there. And that means that they can use this whole solid piece, which looks absolutely fantastic. Only issue I would say with the build is I kind of wish that bit there was metal. That's actually plastic. You can see a little seam there and everything. But it's really, really minor. Everything else about these looks and feels great, and the comfort is fantastic too. On your head, they're not the same kind of weightless effect as like an H800 or an Aria, but they do just sit and they have just the right amount of clamp. The pads are really, really plush, absolutely fantastic. I've had no issues whatsoever with comfort. The only small nitpick I would have about the comfort is that because the cups are spring-loaded, as you can see here, that means that I actually get a little bit more pressure on the bottom here than I do on the top. It doesn't actually cause any discomfort or anything, it's just that it sort of feels like I'm going to break the seal here. I don't, but it feels like it. It took me a couple days to get used to that. I have to say though, thank you so much, Focal, for accommodating users like me who suffer from massive head syndrome. Because certain headphones like the H800, for example, those I find quite difficult sometimes because I have to wear those on the maximum setting and they're only just big enough. Other headphones like the Hi-Fi Aria, I have one notch free. Focal, these fit on a massive noggin and I have two notches free. So even if you are like me and you suffer from massive head syndrome, you will have no issue getting these on your noggin. So thank you very much, Focal. And they go in quite far as well. So even if you have an absolutely tiny head, you should also have no issues. So these look great, they're built great, they're really comfortable, but you don't just buy a headphone because it looks nice, you buy it because it sounds nice. Do these sound nice? Well, As I said in the intro, I've got some very mixed thoughts about these. I think that there's some things which these do very well, and then there's some things which would just prevent me from being able to own one of these. I'm going to talk about the things they do well. So let's start with detail retrieval, because that's potentially one of the most important things. In terms of tonality, you can see the frequency response on screen now. This was taken by Crinical. These are a dark sounding headphone. The treble is somewhat recessed. It extends really well into the sub bass, especially for a dynamic, which is nice, but the treble is definitely lower than most. One problem that can happen when you have a headphone which is either dark or bright is that it can influence how detailed it appears on first listen, not how actually detailed it is. There are very dark sounding headphones which are exceptionally detailed, and there are very bright sounding headphones which have very little resolution at all. And it can be a little bit tricky to pick that out immediately. Things like the HD800 and Sendy Iva, these are both detailed headphones, but they appear more detailed than they actually are once you start listening and comparing to other stuff on first listen, just because they are bright. And then conversely, you have other headphones, like the Odyssey LCD4, which is a dark sounding headphone. It's a very dark headphone, but it's exceptionally resolving. It's just not in your face about it. It's not trying to shout it out. And so a really good track for picking this out, for actually having a proper listen and seeing, regardless of whether it's bright, whether it's dark, whether it's screaming and shouting that resolution into your ear holes, is it actually resolving? Is it actually able to properly resolve, separate, and give you proper full-on detail? This is a really good track for that. This is the Way Up by the Pat Metheny Group. All tracks are linked in the description. These are an exceptionally resolving headphone. These are really, really detailed. Absolutely no issues whatsoever with detail retrieval. And I would say that in terms of detail versus the old clears, they are basically on par. There wasn't really a difference between the two. The differences are mostly in the tonality itself. So in terms of actual resolving capability, they're basically the same. Very resolving, not as resolving as an HD800, but still very resolving. Perhaps the thing that these do best though, and this kind of applies to a lot of the other focal headphones as well, is slam, absolute low-end impact. They have a reputation for this, and it's well deserved, because good God, these can slam hard. This is Fresh Air by Wyatt Estes, and this kind of shows off just what these headphones can do. Yeah, it's... hang on. Sorry, had to do it one more time. Yeah, these are super fun when it comes to electronic music, really heavy, punchy, synth-based stuff. It's really, really good fun for that. Not just speed, but the actual impact that follows it is really, really good and is among some of the best I've heard. This is something which can be quite different with planars and dynamics, where dynamics tend to have a faster kind of immediate slap, as some would call it, but then not as much weight behind it at the end. Whereas a planar, good planars anyway, a lot of the lower end ones not so much, but good planars tend to have better low end texture, timbre and weight, whilst not being quite as immediately snappy. There are exceptions in both camps to that, but generally that's the case. This is doing both amazingly. It's got fantastic sub-bass extension, it is really, really fast, it is really, really punchy, and for EDM, any kind of electronic-based music, deep house stuff, it's really, really good. With acoustic drums, kick drums and that kind of thing, it really depends on the recording. There are some recordings where these will show that off, and there are some where it doesn't really matter, and you might want something with a little bit more texture. Because although these are weighty, these are slammy, these are fast, the actual timbre of low-end elements is not quite as impressive. So to demonstrate this, let's do Dark Water by Agent Fresco. The low-end stuff going on here is just a little bit kind of muddied together. It's got that rumble, it's got that weight and engagement, but there's not really any kind of refinement to it. It's just all a bit of a mush. It's not bad, but it's certainly not great. And so I do wish that there was a little bit more, I think refinement and clarity to the low-end elements here would be really nice. This makes stuff like Pliny's music, where there's some really, really heavy bass guitar and spacious low-end synths, not quite as fun, just because even though Pliny's music, if we find one, let's do Last Call actually, that's a really good song. Even though there is a lot of stuff relying on impact and speed, there's also a lot which is relying on actual sort of texture and clarity to, well, guitar is a really good example. So yeah, the drums are really good, but then the guitar is just not quite where I'd want it to be. So you get loads and loads of slam, and loads of weight, and loads of speed, but then not much in terms of realism or refinement. So resolving capability is good, the slam is good. What else is good? Well, staging is definitely one. Staging is a pretty actually decent point of these. I wasn't super impressed with the staging on the Utopia, but honestly, I'd need to try that on a few other chains. I'm pretty sure this is staging better. It's not going to get you to, HD800 or even ARIA levels or something like that, although the HD800 has some trade-offs with its stage. ARIA less so, but it's definitely a spacious sounding headphone. So if we go back to my playlist and let's pick, Distance by the Rival Bid. Hear the voiceless singing. You got loads of space, loads of air. The upper treble extension is really good, but with that space and staging, there is a caveat, and that's that vocals, male vocals particularly, don't seem to work. It's a weird experience where everything else is big and spacious and positioned properly, and then male vocals are always just kind of here. And this even goes for like binaural recordings. So A Song for You Till the End of Time by J.J. Lin. This is a binaural recording, and on some headphones this sounds insanely impressive. But on these, it's like everything else, there's even like a tap with running water at one point, which sounds very, very good. The resolution's playing a part there, but then his vocals just always sound too close. And so you end up with this situation where it's clear that he's meant to sound far away, but he doesn't, and he ends up sounding really small. It's like you've got a little mini J.J. Lin right next to your head. So let's get about 2 minutes in. The guitar sounds way further away than he is. It doesn't sound right. It's not cohesive. Something is wrong. This applies to a lot of tracks. I've not found that male vocals stage properly on these headphones, and it's a mixture of anywhere from ignorable, you can just get past it, to, in something like this, quite distracting, because it's immediately apparent how it's not doing things correctly. So now we're really starting to get into the stuff which these don't do well. These stage fairly well, other than vocals. These are resolving, these are slammy, but the texture and it's not even the resolution. It's the separation of low-end elements that isn't right. And what really bugs me most about these headphones are two things. One is timbre. Timbre is just wrong. Even though these are a resolving headphone, the timbre of most stuff is just incorrect. And unfortunately, this is something which I've found across the focal line to varying degrees, but this is one of the worst offenders, in my opinion. Timbre of vocals, of strings, of any kind of musical element, brass especially, actually, it's just not right. It just doesn't sound real. It sounds shimmery and metallic and thick at the same time. So this is Blood and Wine, the Grassini Project rendition of it, and 3:25 minutes in. Immediately the strings are too thick. They don't have the right amount of air to them. They sound almost veiled is a good word for it. Then her vocals are way too close. And again, this sort of weird thickness. And there are some headphones which give a really vivid presentation, which gives something with, loads and loads of body. And even if it doesn't sound realistic, it's super enjoyable. The ZMF Verite Closed are a really good example of this. They are very colored. They're not neutral or realistic or anything like that. But it's vivid and engaging, and you can, I can't put my finger on why, but you can just let everything go and just enjoy it. It's like turning up the saturation on a photograph. It's just beautiful. And then it sounds like these are trying to do something similar, but they're just kind of making everything a little bit blurry, overly warm. And it's frustrating because you can hear that these are resolving. There are treble elements especially which have got loads of detail to them, but then as you go down into the mid-range and the lower end, it's not coming through. The timbre is incorrect, the resolution is dropping off, and elements like this, strings and vocals, end up sounding too thick, too full. And it's not just that they're colourful and warm and engaging, it's that they are too much. It's too much. Slight exaggeration, but it sounds like she's singing to you from behind a curtain or something. And that's the problem. And it really, really bugs me, because I don't mind if a headphone's not realistic. There are plenty of headphones which aren't realistic, like the Verite Closed, like the Zeus, which I'm going to talk about in a sec, because this is an interesting comparison. But something about these just makes them sound thick. It's not that they are vivid and colourful and presenting things in a more enjoyable manner, even if it's at the expense of sheer realism. It's that they've just slapped this kind of woolly texture over everything. And that really gets to me. But the one thing that annoys me most about these, and that would prevent me from owning them, and why in the intro I said, did no one at Focal get someone under about 25 to try these, is that there is something around 18 kilohertz or so, which I can best describe as a sort of resonance, and it makes these really fatiguing. These are a darker headphone, but something about the treble is exceptionally fatiguing to me. This is not just something which I found. A friend of mine who runs Viking Audio Blog and Viking Weave Cables, you can see his review here, and there's a link in the description. He had the exact same thing. He couldn't listen to these for more than 15 minutes or so, and I've got the same problem. Koji from Convince Me Audio, who you can watch his review here or click the link in the description, he had the same thing. He really liked these headphones. He enjoyed them a lot, but he did find the same treble issue, and he could get about 40 minutes in. I'm about 20, maybe 15, maybe 20 minutes. And it's interesting because it is around 18 kilohertz. It's really, really high up. It's this metallic kind of resonance to the treble, and it makes it really tiring. If you are 30 or 40 years old or something like that, and you can't hear up to 20 kilohertz anymore, your hearing cuts off at 16 kilohertz, which happens with age, that's just how things go, you probably won't find this to be an issue at all. It'll probably be absolutely no worries. But if you're 25, I'm 23, then you will probably be able to hear that, and it will probably prevent you from enjoying these headphones. Even if you don't immediately notice it on first listen, because I didn't at first, but then as I listened for about 2 or 3 minutes, I go, something's wrong, something is wrong. It's making me tense my tensor tympani muscle, even when it's not loud. And that's a shame. So, to show you exactly what I'm talking about, let's do... Well, actually, it happens with this voice. That's the thing. It's not like there's loads of really, really high frequency stuff going on with her voice. But it's making me tense my eardrums. I can't listen to it for very long. And a track which kind of shows everything which I've discussed so far. The slam, the male vocal, or male and female to a lesser extent, but the vocal closeness issue, the lack of timbre, the weird sort of variation in staging, and the treble fatiguingness is Holding On To You by 21 Pilots. The drums are slammy and fast and impactful and really, really good fun. The vocals sound really, really close in. the timbre of that, even though it's a synth, it's not a real instrument. You listen to it on any other headphone or set of speakers and it sounds different. And it doesn't sound the same on these headphones as it does on almost anything else I've tried. So even though I don't have a real-life reference for the timbre, I can still tell that it's wrong, because I listened to this song on something else, be it an aria, a Susvara, a Sendiiva, it doesn't really matter. Even Stax, something completely different. And you get the same sort of character to that synth. But then you listen on these and it sounds thick and woolly and weird. So even though I don't have a real-life reference, it's still wrong. And as the piano's playing, as he's singing, there's just this fatiguing pressure in the real upper treble, which makes me want to take them off after a few minutes. Even if it's a really good song and I'm really enjoying it, I'm enjoying it whilst sort of tensing and waiting for the next metallic shimmer to come along and bother me. And that alone would prevent me from buying these. So, in summary then, these are a beautifully built headphone. These are really, really comfy. They come with some absolutely fantastic accessories, and they do some things really, really well. They slam super hard. The treble has fantastic levels of resolution. These are super comfy. They look amazing. They stage pretty well, but the timbre is just anywhere from mediocre to awful, depending on what exactly you're listening to. They clip if you go too loud. That's another thing. If you do get to a volume where they are clipping, you need to turn it down, though, because you are listening too loud. But if you are someone who likes to listen really, really loud, then these might not be for you, because you will actually clip the driver. Like, the driver cannot excurse more, and you get this cracking sound. But the timbre being just wrong, and this upper treble pressure, which a few people I know, other than just me, have experienced, is preventing me from liking these. I can't listen to these for more than 15 minutes without feeling tired. And that's a damn shame, because otherwise I think these would be a pretty nice headphone. If you are over 25, if you're 30 or 40, that's probably not a problem. And I imagine you might really enjoy these. But for me, for a younger viewer, I do not think that these are a good choice. If you're wondering whether you should get these or the old clears, I would say just get the old clear. The old clear, in my opinion, was better in just about every way. I can't think of anything which these are doing better than the OG clear, other than maybe looking a bit better. I do prefer the aesthetics of these, but I prefer the old clears to these. The old clears had some of the same character. They're a very, very similar headphone, but I did prefer those. The other thing is that if you are mostly listening to electronic music and you are wanting something primarily because these slam super hard, consider these. These are the Harmonic Dyne Zeus. These are about $300. These were kindly sent to me by Linsol. And these actually slam just as, if not slightly harder than those do. These are not as resolving. They don't stage quite as well, but they don't have the same timbre issues. The timbre on these is better than that. It's not amazing. It's not really designed for acoustic music. But good God, these are so much fun. And these don't have the same problems. I can listen to these forever. These are also comfier. Good God, I wish these pads were just on everything. Give me these pads on every headphone ever. Thank you. These are way cheaper. These are about a third of the price, or a quarter even. These slam harder. These are not really giving up much in terms of detail if you are listening to electronic music, and the timbre is better. So even though these are a more technically performant headphone in most regards, you swap between the two and it's clear that these stage better and these are more detailed. I prefer these headphones just because they don't give me problems. I enjoy these more. These are more impressive, but I enjoy these more. And if I am listening to electronic music, I would go for these. And if I'm not, I wouldn't go for either. I'd go for something else. And so that puts this in a really weird position where it's too expensive and doesn't quite do what I'd want it to do. And regardless of what genre I'm listening to, I would pick a different headphone. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you'd like to see my review of the Alex when that arrives, then go to my website, GoldenSound.audio. If you pop your email in, you get notified whenever I make a new post. There are reviews and measurements of various devices, which I've got here going up on that website. Join the Discord to chat with me and others. And if you like what I'm doing, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. You get early access to videos and access to the private Telegram chat as well. A huge thank you to everyone who is supporting me on Patreon. 100% of proceeds from Patreon are going towards paying for the Audio Precision Analyzer for production of objective-based content. Thank you so much, especially to my crazy Summit Fire people, King Jong-un and Commodus, my Legend tier patrons, Chris, Gravitas, CK Yozizawa Zoo, Dizarasta, Daniel Mellinger, Jan R, Jithan Nashiba, Lossless British Accent, and Ross Kyle, and my Diamond tier patrons, Naivotsu, Adam Cardos, Beanbo Owito, Chandler Bassett, Notwist, Gizmo1K, Grant Evans, Jeremy Zagorski, Lana Bennett, Luxifer, Nino, Pokey, and Victor Delgado. You guys are fantastic. Thank you so much. If you want to ask me or anyone else any questions and discuss audio and anything to do with Wiggly Air, join the Discord or the private Patreon chat. Until next time, have a great day.